Right now, two people are watching this. The first person learned something yesterday, watched 2 videos, read a few comments, and now feels ready to explain the entire subject to anyone who disagrees. The second person has been doing something for years. They have solved real problems. They have helped other people. And still, they quietly wonder whether they're actually good at anything. One person is too confident. One person is not confident enough. And here is the strange part. Neither feeling is a reliable measurement of ability. Because your brain does not show you your true skill level. It shows you a story. A story designed to protect your ego, avoid embarrassment, save energy, and keep you inside what already feels familiar. That is why someone can fail an exam and still feel fully prepared. Why a beginner can give advice with the certainty of an expert. Why a talented student can get good grades and still feel stupid. Why a capable employee can be promoted and secretly think, they are going to find out I do not belong here. Your brain is not always trying to tell you the truth about your ability. Sometimes, it is trying to protect you from it. In 1995, a man named MacArthur Wheeler walked into 2 banks in broad daylight. No mask. No disguise. No serious plan to hide his identity. When police arrested him, he was genuinely confused. He believed lemon juice would make his face invisible to security cameras. Why? Because lemon juice can be used as invisible ink. He tested the idea on himself, misunderstood the result, and became completely confident in something that was obviously false. That bizarre story helped inspire psychologists David Dunning and Dunning-Kruger to study a painful question: why do people who know the least sometimes feel the most certain? Their answer was uncomfortable. When you are unskilled at something, you are often missing the very knowledge you need to see your own mistakes. Think about learning chess. At the beginning, you see the board. You see the pieces. You know the rules. And you think, okay, I understand this. Then you play someone better. Suddenly you discover traps, patterns, sacrifices, and decisions you never even noticed. Your ability did not suddenly disappear. Your awareness increased. At the start of learning, you do not know enough to see how much you do not know. So confidence can feel high. Then you learn more. You notice the gaps. You see the complexity. And confidence drops. Not because you became worse, but because you finally started seeing clearly. This happens everywhere. A student reads a chapter once and thinks, that was easy. Then the test asks them to explain the idea without looking at the book, and their mind goes blank. A new investor watches a few videos, makes one lucky decision, and starts believing they have discovered a system the market somehow missed. A beginner programmer copies code from a tutorial and feels like a developer. Until something breaks outside the tutorial. The danger is not being a beginner. Everyone starts there. The danger is confusing familiarity with mastery. Your brain loves familiarity. When something looks familiar, sounds familiar, or feels easy to follow, your brain quietly says, I know this. But recognizing something is not the same as being able to use it. Reading notes is not the same as recalling them. Watching someone solve a problem is not the same as solving it yourself. Listening to an explanation is not the same as explaining it when someone challenges you. That gap, between feeling like you understand and proving that you understand, is where your brain starts lying. But overconfidence is only half of the trap. Because the opposite lie can be just as destructive. The more skilled you become, the more you start noticing what excellence actually looks like. A beginner sees a finished painting and thinks, that is beautiful. An experienced artist sees composition, lighting, color, control, and years of decisions most people never notice. The expert has a wider map. And because they can see more, they can also see more of what they have not mastered. That is why capable people often feel less certain than people with less ability. They understand the difference between, "I have done this before," and, "I understand every possible version of this problem." That is not weakness. That is intellectual honesty. But there is a point where honesty turns into self-sabotage. You make one mistake and call yourself bad at everything. You compare your first attempt to someone else's 10th year. You dismiss every success as luck. You tell yourself, "I only did well because the task was easy. They only praised me to be nice. I fooled them," and slowly, you create a rule in your mind. "Nothing I do counts as evidence that I am capable." That rule is not humility. It is a distorted filter. Imagine two students getting the same grade. Student 1 gets a low grade and says, "The teacher was unfair." Student 2 gets a high grade and says, "The exam was easy." One rejects negative feedback. The other rejects positive feedback. Both stay stuck. Because real growth needs two things at the same time: enough confidence to keep trying, and enough honesty to keep improving. Not blind confidence. Not constant self-doubt. Calibration. The ability to look at your performance without turning it into a judgment about your worth. That is harder than it sounds. Because your brain does not experience feedback as neutral information. It often experiences feedback as a threat. When someone corrects you, your brain may hear, "You are not smart." When you fail, your brain may hear, "You do not belong here." So instead of learning, you defend. You make excuses. You avoid the difficult task. You stop asking questions. And then you call the lack of progress proof that you were never capable. But ability is not a fixed identity. It is evidence, built over time. It is the result of attempts, feedback, correction, repetition, and the courage to look bad before you get better. The people who improve fastest are not always the smartest in the room. They are often the people who are willing to test themselves. They do not ask, "Do I feel ready?" They ask, "Can I do it without help?" They do not ask, "Do I look confident?" They ask, "What does the result show?" That shift changes everything. Because feelings are fast. Evidence is slower. Feelings say, "I am terrible at this." Evidence says, 6 months ago, I could not do this at all." Feelings say, "I understand it." Evidence says, "Explain it from memory." Solve a new version. Teach it to someone else. So how do you stop your brain from lying about your ability? First, separate your identity from your performance. A bad presentation does not mean you are bad at presenting. A failed test does not mean you are stupid. A rejected idea does not mean you have nothing valuable to say. It means one attempt did not work the way you wanted. That is information, not a life sentence. Second, replace vague feelings with small tests. Do not say, "I think I understand." Close the book. Write what you remember. Do not say, "I think I am improving at work." Look at the work you can now do that used to confuse you. Do not say, "I am probably not good enough." Ask someone skilled and honest, "What is one thing I do well, and one thing I should improve next?" You do not need a perfect answer about your ability. You need better evidence. Third, keep a record of proof. Not motivational quotes. Proof. The hard conversation you handled. The assignment you completed. The skill you practiced when nobody was watching. The problem you solved after wanting to quit. Your brain has a natural bias toward threats, mistakes, and embarrassing moments. So when you feel incapable, you need evidence that is stronger than your mood. And finally, learn to become comfortable with being a beginner again. Because every meaningful skill will make you feel stupid at some point. That feeling is not always a warning that you should stop. Sometimes it is a signal that you have reached the edge of your current ability. And that edge is where growth lives. The goal is not to become endlessly confident. The goal is to become harder to fool. Harder to fool when success makes you arrogant. Harder to fool when failure makes you hopeless. Harder to fool when your brain tells you already know enough, or you will never be good enough, because both sentences can keep you exactly where you are. One stops you from learning. The other stops you from trying. Your real ability is not hidden inside a feeling. It is revealed in what you practice, what you test, what you improve, and what you keep doing after your confidence disappears. So the next time you feel too certain, pause. Ask, what am I missing? And the next time you feel like a fraud, pause. Ask, what evidence am I ignoring? That is how you build real confidence. Not by pretending you are perfect. Not by waiting until fear disappears. But by seeing yourself more honestly, and moving forward anyway. This is the Growth Blueprint. Subscribe for more videos that help you think better, learn faster, and build a life you are actually proud of.